2 hours left. Archangel Michael says, I order you to open this urgently. Don't tell anyone. It's only for you. They are setting up a meeting to discuss your removal of. Open it immediately. Archangel Michael says, I place my hand over your doorway and command the hinges of your life to hold, because 2 hours remain and the room they are preparing for your absence already has your chair pushed back. I order you to open this urgently and keep your silence because the message is sealed with your breath and your future, and no mouth beyond yours is allowed to shape it. Do not tell anyone because the ones arranging a meeting to discuss your removal have rehearsed each sentence and rehearsed the false softness of their voices. You move through a day that pretends to be ordinary, while a clock inside a windowless office marks you in red. Your draft is on a table next to a lukewarm glass of water, and a folder with your name is beneath a heavier file to hide the edge of the decision. The room smells of toner and calculation. They do not know you can hear, but the wind carries intent as easily as dust. A network of glances has mapped the route of your undoing, and yet their map has forgotten the terrain of your courage. The 2 hours ahead are sacred ground that they cannot cross unless you open the gate. You keep your eyes steady while the pattern sharpens. One person will pretend to protect you while sliding a paper that steals authority in neat lines and polite fonts. Another will smile with a mouth trained to hide knives, and a third will keep the minutes like a metronome tapping out your name. The plan is to present the meeting as routine. The plan is to call it a check-in and a quick update while your chair becomes a waiting room for a future without your voice. The plan is to lock the decision behind a soft tone and a scripted sigh. You will not sit in their waiting room. You will not hand your name to a chorus that never cared about the sound of it. You will not allow your presence to be erased while your absence is repackaged as consensus. 2 hours is a threshold that listens when you move. It hears your footstep on tile and counts your steady breaths. It records the pivot when you choose light over compliance. Close the unnecessary tabs in your mind. Leave only the pages that carry proof and the pages that carry promise. The rest can go like smoke pulled out a window. You remember the first time you were told not to trust your own reading of a rule. That memory is a misfired spell that never landed. Your discernment outlive it. A device on a desk vibrates with pre-written phrases designed to sound fair. The draft includes lines about alignment and transition and the good of the whole. Every line has a space reserved for your silence. You will not provide the silence. You will provide presence that refuses to be folded. You will provide detail that refuses to be dismissed. They have assigned a time and a corner and a chair that faces a framed certificate. They rehearse the smile and the pause and the half-lowered eyelids that signal staged care. They have not rehearsed your unbroken gaze. Seek the documents that hold your work in your own language. Gather notes that carry dates and signatures like lanterns. Line them quietly at the edge of your reach. Back up the messages that prove the thread of events. Name each file so it summons the right memory without struggle. Save them where your intuition can find them in one breath. The first person in the chain will soften their vowels and borrow your vocabulary to sound familiar. The second will fold their hands to signal neutrality while sliding the decision to the center of the table. The third will measure your heartbeat by the length of your silence. They believe your stillness is surrender. Your stillness is a blade being sharpened underwater. Your stillness is a lighthouse lamp being trimmed before nightfall. Hold your posture like a key that already knows the lock. Hold your voice like a bell whose sound cannot be swallowed by carpeting or apologies. Hold your timeline like a river that refuses to flow backward. Your plan names your removal as the path to peace. Peace that requires your absence is sabotage in a white shirt. Peace that cannot bear your breath is not peace. A document calls this a transition period. Your spirit calls a theft disguise as paperwork. Your spine calls it a moment to stand. 2 hours holds enough time to anchor every loose plank. 2 hours holds enough time to write the sentence that resets the room. 2 hours holds enough time to step into a future that will not shrink for anyone. Move the evidence from the edges to the center of your preparation. Make a ledger of what you built, what you repaired, what you led through storms. Make a ledger of promises made to you and promises kept by you. The ledger is not a plea, the ledger is a bell that tolls facts. The ledger is a mirror they cannot fog with their breath. Do not meet them in a room that removes windows. Do not meet them where the air is scripted and the chairs are set for approval. Do not meet them without your own witness inside your chest. Your witness is not an audience. Your witness is the bright, unblinking point of truth that burns through costumes. Your witness is your crown. They will try to hurry. They will press the meeting forward and compress the minutes and call it urgent. You will not trade precision for speed. Write a statement that is not a question and not a plea. Write a statement that names the reality and fixes it to the table like a map with 4 pins. Write a statement that rejects the hush that empowers cowards. The statement will travel with you and speak when mouths pretend to be doors. The statement will anchor the conversation to facts. The statement will end the choreography. There is a phrase in their plan that tries to make you complicit. It invites you to call your own exit a mutual decision. It invites you to sign your own dimming. You will not sign dimming, you will not narrate your own removal as reasonableness. You will not carry their staged truth into the hallway. This hour calls for exact steps. Step 1 is to secure your record. Step 2 is to draw the line with words that cannot be twisted into ropes. Step 3 is to move the meeting into sunlight. Step 4 is to bring the timeline out loud until it stands on its own legs. Step 5 is to hold your ground without raising your voice. The person who pretends to be neutral is not. The person who smiles through the decision has already practiced the after call. The person who watches the clock measures you by compliance, not by value. Your value is not measured by their comfort. Your value is not a chair that can be slid away when the agenda shifts. Your value is a structure that outlasts rented rooms. If they bring a script, break it with a sentence that refuses their frame. If they bring a vote already counted, break it with a ledger already bright. If they bring a timeline already drawn, break it with the river of your work that still runs. You do not need anger to be immovable, you need clarity folded into courage. You need calm that is not passive. Calm that breathes and plants its foot and says enough is a mountain with a pulse. Calm that remembers how many storms you have walked through is a harbor that guards itself. Calm that holds a pen like a staff can part a sea of false agreement. They called your integrity a tone problem, they called your boundaries a disruption. They called your excellence too sharp for their table. Your excellence does not fit inside their framed certificate because it is alive. Your boundaries cut only what tries to bind your breathing. Your integrity refuses choreography. 2 hours reduces to 90 minutes, and the room they reserved still thinks it is the center. The center is where you stand. The center is wherever you speak with your whole chest. There is a sentence you will carry into the room if you must enter it. The sentence names the timeline and refuses the rewrite. The sentence declares that no agreement exists outside what is written and signed in truth. You will not nod through mislabeled kindness. You will not agree to an exit disguised as collaboration. You will not pick up a burden they forged from your light. The person who calls you dramatic is the person who profits from your silence. The person who asks you to be flexible is the person who has already fixed the outcome. The person who asks for grace is the person who offered none. Grace without honesty is manipulation. Flexibility that only bends you is a trap. Drama is a mirror that shows their own staging. Your path is narrower than you hoped and wider than they fear. Narrow because it refuses compromise with deceit. Wide because it opens toward a future that does not need their approval. Set your phone to do not disturb for every voice that shakes your certainty. Open only the messages that steady your hands. Close the blinds to eyes that never blessed your day. Look around at what you built and feel the weight of it settle into your bones. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. Alignment is the opposite of begging. Alignment is the opposite of panic. Alignment is a doorway you make by standing in the exact shape of your calling. The chair they pushed back will remain empty when truth enters. The paper they printed will curl at the edges under real light. The smile they rehearsed will falter when their script meets your ledger. In 60 minutes they will send a gentle reminder. In 60 minutes they will label the meeting important and brief. In 60 minutes they will expect you to appear grateful for the chance to be dismissed kindly. You will not walk into a performance. You will not shake hands with the actor who plays benefactor. You will not accept applause for your own erasure. If anyone asks for a private sidebar, remember that secrecy is the mask of theft. If anyone asks you to agree off the record, remember that shadows are where signatures go to die. If anyone asks you to be reasonable, remember that reason without truth is a sale. The door that matters remains yours, the name that matters remains yours. The breath that matters remains yours. Write your refusal like a covenant. Write it with clean lines and a steady spine. Write it so it can be read without your presence and still carry your voice. Refusal is not rage. Refusal is the key that keeps your house. Refusal is the light that does not follow orders from fog. They will say that everyone agrees. They will say that timing is unfortunate. They will say that the decision has nothing to do with you. Everyone is not in the room. Timing is a tool that serves intention. Every decision is born from someone's hand. Stand in a place where your feet can feel the ground, lift your shoulders into the shape that fits your name. Keep your words clipped to truth like a badge that does not fall. In 40 minutes a message will arrive with a link. It will claim to include context. It will ask you to keep the conversation confidential. You will not let confidentiality erase accountability. You will not treat secrecy as compassion. You will not kneel to a calendar event. Your breath will be steady like a drum that calls only the ones who truly hear you. Your pulse will slow near the door. Your eyes will be the last light they can dim. They prepared follow-up talking points to soothe the aftermath. You prepared a future that will not need their soothing. You prepared a room where your chair is centered by merit and not permission. When they speak of restructuring, they speak of removing your lighthouse from their harbor so their smaller boats feel bigger. When they speak of synergy, they speak of pulling down your scaffolding once the house stands. When they speak of cultural fit, they speak of a costume they wish to force over your armor. Your armor is soft on the inside and uncut on the outside. Your armor lets your heart listen while your ribs remain safe. Your armor does not clang because it was made to move with you. You will keep a record of every syllable they offer in this attempt to shape your exit. You will keep a record of the calendar entries, the initials that appear beside decisions, the edits that shrink your name. You will keep a record that will outlive their folder. If the meeting cannot be avoided, move it to a place you choose. Move it to a time you choose. Move it to a format that leaves a trail. Your voice will not be captured in a room designed to smother it. Your voice will arrive like daylight through blinds that never agreed to stay closed. Your voice will draw borders that heal rather than wound. You will name what happens in plain language. You will avoid the fog of corporate hymns. You will insist on the vocabulary of reality. Vocabulary that calls theft by its name saves time. Vocabulary that calls erasure by its name stops the bleed. Vocabulary that calls your presence necessary ends the performance. In 20 minutes the first call will suggest a compromise that is only your loss softened with hand lotion. You will hear the tap of the metronome in their breath. You will not dance to it. Your calm will unsettle the chorus because it is not denial. Your calm will interrupt the ritual because it is not fear. Your calm will refuse the costume because it is not betting for a part. If your attendance is demanded, bring your ledger and your statement and your witness inside your chest. Sit with your back straight and your mouth ready for truth. Let your eyes be a mirror that does not smudge. The first line you speak will cut cleanly. The second will lay the facts like stones across a river. The third will close the route they hope to steer you through. You will not allow the meeting to end with an action item that hides a decision already made. You will not allow your name to be placed in a paragraph that redefines your work as a problem. You will not allow your exit to dress itself in your gratitude. Gratitude is not a leash. Gratitude does not owe silence. Gratitude does not stand in the corner while theft wears its smile. Your future has already begun to stretch. It recognizes the doorway you are about to step through. It recognizes the light you carry even when the hallway flickers. You will gather your tools and your breath and your name, you will bring them to the threshold. You will speak and the threshold will widen. 10 minutes become 5 and the air tightens like a belt that someone else purchased for you. You loosen it with a sentence that does not ban. You breathe and the belt remembers who owns the waist. Your preparation is complete. Your evidence is sharpened and your clarity is anchored. Your presence is ready. When the call arrives, it will arrive with a tone that imitates care. Care without truth is only choreography. You will not dance. The meeting will try to claim you gently. You will claim yourself firmly. The difference will light the room. You will not be removed from what you rightly hold. You will not be erased from what you rightly build. You will not be rewarded into someone else's comfort. Stand now at the doorway you chose, open the message you needed. Close the door to the stage that was never yours. The hour ends and your spine stands like a pillar. The room breathes and remembers that oxygen serves those who do not kneel. The future shifts its weight to your side. Your voice moves first, your evidence follows. Your name arrives last and takes its seat without asking. No one removes what light refuses to surrender. No one edits what truth refuses to release. No one closes a door that your calling keeps open. The meeting is ash in a shape that looks like paper. The decision is a costume that cannot survive rain. Your presence is the weather. Stand. Breathe. To beak. This message ends where your new beginning starts. The clock turns but does not own you. The future opens because you did. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks with contributions of up to $1.20. Archangel Michael says, "The hourglass narrows and the last grains are choosing where to fall while you decide what story your voice will tell. The preparation you made has a weight that steadies the floor beneath you and the door no longer feels like an entrance to a trap. You carry the quiet of a storm that knows its path and refuses to bow to barometers built by liars. The names on the calendar invite are stitched together to form a curtain and the stage behind it has props arranged to mimic fairness. Your arrival does not join the scene because your feet prefer ground that answers to truth rather than applause. Your pocket holds the ledger that hums like a small engine ready to power the lights. You breathe and the room recognizes a center that does not match the chairs. The chair they reserved for you looks too small for your spine and too fragile for your resolve. You choose your own place to stand and the air changes shape around you. The first mouth opens to release a script about transition and gratitude and forward motion. Your ledger interrupts with dates that carry their own. Gravity in the script stumbles over its shoelaces. The air begins to listen because the words you speak do not need consent to be real. You place one page on the table and another inside your voice and a third inside your eyes. The three move together like a chord that cannot be drowned. The chord names the timeline cleanly and the room loses its favorite fog. They trade glances that reveal the rehearsal and your stillness absorbs the echoes. You keep your pulse at a pace that belongs to mountains rather than corridors. You let every sentence arrive with clean boots that leave clear footprints. The person in the corner lifts a pen and waits for your compliance to shape the notes. Your refusal is a steady flame that does not flicker when breath tries to blow it sideways. The pen lowers because it has no lies left to record without shaking. You slide the second page forward and the sequence of events forms a spine that stands taller than every title in the room. Each line carries a date and a signature and a task completed with excellence that did not ask for permission. The spine cannot be bent without snapping and the room hears the warning. They speak of misunderstandings and your ledger replies with clarity. They speak of alignment and your ledger replies with deliverables. They speak of culture and your ledger replies with outcomes that paid the bills and lifted the floor. You refuse the frame that paints your light as noise, and you refuse the mask that labels your boundary as harm. You choose language that protects reality from theater, and you choose posture that protects dignity from discount. You breathe and the clock loses its ability to bully. Archangel Michael says, lift the sentence that carries the charge and press it gently into the center of their map. The sentence states that no decision will be recognized without recorded transparency, and that no transition will be named without your consent. The sentence is not a dagger because it is a door that requires truth to turn its handle. You state that the meeting requires a witness through record, and that your contributions require naming without erasure. You state that the future requires terms that acknowledge value rather than repurpose it. You state that your silence is not for sale. One person tries to soften the steel and your eyes meet theirs without heat or apology. Another person consults a policy like a shield and discovers that the shield is porous when faced with dates that do not lie. The hidden vote they hope to rubber stamp dissolves under the lamp of order. You refuse isolation by naming the process out loud, and you refuse haste by protecting sequence. The timeline stands without their favor because truth does not kneel to the hands that harmed it. Your hands remain steady because they know their work. They attempt to relocate the conversation into sidebars and you decline relocation. They attempt to shift topics into abstractions and you decline abstraction. They attempt to add sugar to the blade and you decline the taste that numbs. You propose clarity that costs effort rather than comfort. You propose steps that require clean logging and open confirmation. You propose a room with windows that remain unlocked. Their faces reorganize into new angles that admit calculation without apology. Yours holds one expression only, and it is made of daylight. The daylight refuses to be turned down by a diver switch disguised as courtesy. You describe the tasks you created from nothing and the fires you put out without fanfare. You describe the bridges you built where there were only fences and the teams you healed where there were only silos. The room realizes that removal cannot be repackaged as improvement without breaking faith with results. A shadow of threat tries to enter with the word consequences, and you answer with the word accountability. A shadow of pressure tries to enter with the word deadlines, and you answer with the phrase due process. A shadow of flattery tries to enter with the word flexibility, and you answer with the word integrity. You remain seated in dignity when they stand to claim authority that shrinks under measurement. You remain rooted in reality when they float above details to avoid getting wet. You remain aligned to purpose when they attempt to route energy into appeasement. Archangel Michael says, bring forward the line that seals the ground beneath your feet. The line declares that your role will not be redefined without a transparent review that honors documented outcomes. The line declares that any proposed change must be written with the ink of truth rather than smoke. You list the decisions that require reversal, and you list the acknowledgments that require writing. You list the missing signatures that require arriving. You list the next meeting that requires light rather than theater. They attempt to close with a bland summary that erases every hard edge. You reopen the summary with hedges intact and corners squared. The blandness evaporates because your presence does not accept sugar where salt belongs. The smallest movement you make becomes the loudest sound in the room because it carries the bell that rings for clarity. The bell does not mock and it does not plead. The bell says only that truth has entered and will not be escorted out. You ask for nothing because you demand nothing that is not already yours by record and labor. You hold every syllable at body temperature so it cannot be labeled aggressive or meek. You match tone with fact and let the match light what needs to be seen. A quiet inventory happens in each chair as your words land. The inventory notices the weight of the ledger and the weight of the room changes. The meeting loses its staged momentum and gains a real one that pulls toward repair. You feel the shift beneath your shoes and you do not move to celebrate. You keep the center steady because endurance is a better eye than victory laps. You mark the next step and name it with care. They request time to review and you grant time with terms that prevent erasure. They request language adjustments and you grant language only where accuracy improves. They request kindness and you grant dignity that requires honesty. You set the follow-up in daylight with a calendar entry that bears your conditions. You set the attachments to include the ledger and the statement in the list of reversals. You set the room to recognize that you are not available for theater at any hour. The person who kept the metronome of minutes looks up and finally sees a human rather than an obstacle. The person who smiled through the script exhales and the script becomes paper instead of law. The person who played neutrality returns the pen to the table like a flag lowered without fanfare. You gather your pages without haste and the pages seem heavier because they carry the respect you just required. You stand in a way that respects your knees and your memories. You walk in a way that refuses to leave pieces of yourself behind. Outside the room the hallway feels wider than before because you trimmed the false walls built by whispers. The light along the baseboards looks like a path rather than decoration. The door closes behind you and stays a door rather than a mouth that still speaks. You do not swallow relief and you do not release vigilance. You file the notes that will protect tomorrow from lazy edits. You send the message that confirms the terms so no one can repaint them in the night. Your allies appear without confetti because real allies travel like groundwater. They ask for nothing and offer presents. They speak with verbs that build rather than adjectives that soothe. You give thanks privately to the breath that did not abandon you and you give thanks to the spine that refused to rend itself. You step into the afternoon that belongs to those who choose daylight. You leave a trace of steadiness behind you so the hallway remembers. Archangel Michael says, remember how you felt when truth stood up in that chair and refused to yield its back. Remember that feeling and wear it to your next sunrise. Remember that invaders cannot hold ground that truth has already seeded with roots. You review the ledger one more time and notice where the story asks for closure written by you and not by a committee. You write the closure in a paragraph that blesses your work without begging for blessing from anyone else. You sign it with a name that fits like skin. You send a note to yourself that marks this day as a hinge. You send a note to your future that says the door opens inward and outward now. You send a note to your past that says nothing was wasted. The next morning arrives and the calendar submits to the terms you set because you required daylight. The meeting adjusts itself to the truth you installed like a load-bearing beam. The room welcomes windows it once feared. They bring revised words that admit their errors without theatrical grief. They bring signatures that acknowledge the spine of your ledger. They bring steps that move toward repair rather than toward replacement. You accept only what matches reality and you return what does not. You require that praise never be used as payment for silence. You require that peace be built with nails made of truth. The days that follow grow taller because the foundation no longer tilts. The work unfurls with less noise and more tone. The weather inside that building stops pretending to be a storm that you caused. When memory tries to bring you the taste of fear, you meet it with the flavor of resolve. When fatigue tries to fold you into a smaller chair, you remind it that your posture owns its measurements. When cynicism tries to joke about inevitable failure, you remind it that inevitability was never invited. Your attention shifts toward building again, not to prove worth but to enjoy the room you fought to keep honest. Your craft warms the table like a pot that feeds. Your days answer to the bell of purpose rather than to the buzz of anxiety. You draw a map for others who will face the same theater in different buildings. The map includes lines for evidence and routes for clarity and rest stops for breath. The map refuses to label the victim as the problem and the boundary as the threat. Your voice finds a new register that is kinder to your throat and stronger in the air. Your eyes soften toward yourself without softening toward deceit. Your hands relax without surrendering their ability to hold. Archangel Michael says, keep the ledger alive not as a weapon but as a record of how you carried fire without burning the house. Keep the statement nearby not as a chant but as a tool that squares course when rooms lean. Keep the witness within you awake with rest and honest food and friendly laughter that needs no permission. You end the chapter by naming what you learned without decorating it with excessive polish. You learn that a chair can be a trap when you do not choose it. You learn that a meeting can be a corridor when you bring a door of your own. You learn that transitions are honest only when they invite the person who lives the change to write the first sentence. You learn that gratitude must never be harvested to cover theft. You learn that calm can be steel and that steel can be warm. From this place you design the next work with terms that honor your time. From this place you build partnerships that do not ask you to shrink to fit a frame. From this place you teach the next person that daylight is not a luxury but a rule. You walk past the window where the weather used to knock too loudly and you wave without flinching. You walk past the room where the script once waited and you turn off a light that no longer needs to pretend to be a sun. You walk into the day that spells your name correctly and refuses to shorten it. Your removal never happened because removal requires your consent when your ledger anchors the floor. Your erasure never happened because erasure requires your absence and you chose presence. Your dimming never happened because dimming requires your agreement, and you revoked it. The story moves forward with pages that respect your margins and your margins now hold flowers instead of warnings. The spine remains straight because you told it the truth and fed it with courage. The cover stays open because your life refuses to close itself while the ink is still warm. When night returns, it returns as a guest rather than a thief. When morning rises, it rises to meet your posture rather than to test it. When you speak again, it sounds like home to the part of you that almost forgot how it feels. You lean into the work of making things that last longer than meetings. You lean into the joy of building structures that do not need applause to stand. You lean into the craft of telling the truth so beautifully that even the stubborn listen. The world around you notices and adjusts its distance to respect your borders. Opportunities arrive that recognize your exact outline and do not ask you to blur. Rooms open that were once guarded by the very people who tried to dim your bulb. You enter those rooms without carrying the old script and without carrying resentment that eats hours. You enter with the ledger translated into wisdom and with the statement translated into habit. You enter with the witness still awake and smiling. Archangel Michael says, keep moving in daylight and keep papers in order and keep your name clean on your own tongue. Keep the door open to those who love truth and close to those who trade in fraud. Keep the metronome inside your chest set to the tempo of purpose rather than panic. The path does not ask you to hurry because it trusts you to be steady. The horizon does not ask you to argue because it knows how you arrive. The work does not ask you to beg because it remembers what your hands can do. The story that began with an urgent whisper ends with a steady anthem that does not need volume to be heard. The clock that once tried to bully now ticks in service to your pace. The room that once tried to own you now lives only as a lesson that sharpened your sight. You close this continuation with the same quiet needed to open it. You hold your name like a lantern that never borrows its light. You step forward and the ground stands up to meet you. Archangel Michael says, the morning after truth held the room. You rise like someone who met their own backbone and agreed to keep it. The blinds open on a sky that remembers your spine from the night before. The air tastes like a promise delivered in plain paper and real ink. You step into tasks with a steadiness that no longer requires armor at every hour. The tools you touch feel lighter because you stopped lifting other people's disguises. The clock works for you because urgency now serves clarity. There is a message waiting at attempts to rewind the tape. You read it with eyes that refuse to be hypnotized by soft phrases over hard facts. You reply in lines that move like rails and keep the train from entering fog. A colleague approaches with caution and asks how you kept your voice from breaking. You explain that your voice did not need to survive a storm when truth made the weather itself. You tell them that preparation is not paranoia when patterns have names and dates. You reopen your ledger and add the latest entry. The new page carries the scent of resolve and the neatness of calm. The signature at the bottom looks like a person who will not negotiate away their own outline. In the corridor a door stands where a wall used to be. You recognize it as the space you created by refusing to be removed. You pass through without shrinking. The project that once trembled under politics now stands tall under structure. You set milestones that answer to results rather than to moods. You place people where their gifts can breathe rather than where flattery used to sit. The hand that once tried to steer you by pressure now offers cooperation. You accept only what aligns with reality and decline theater in any costume. The handshake becomes a tool rather than a trap. You begin writing a guide for others who will face curated rooms and careful smiles. The guide includes steps that do not depend on luck. The guide includes language that cannot be bent without snapping. You teach that daylight is logistics as much as faith. You teach that paper curls are lanterns as much as protection. You teach that composture is armor as much as steel. A quiet peace returns that does not put you to sleep. It keeps you awake to opportunity rather than awake to threat. It hums at a frequency that rewards presence. Archangel Michael says, walk through the building like water with a memory for shape. Flow where the work calls and gather where the purpose deepens. Refuse every funnel that tries to pour you into someone else's mold. Your name appears on a proposal that needed your exact handwriting. The team breathes easier because the room accepts honest air. The draft reads like a map with roads that lead somewhere real. You schedule conversations in rooms with windows and on records that stay. You choose tables that hold facts better than performances. You leave chairs empty rather than fill them with pretense. An old fear circles for a final look and finds no furniture to cling to. The corners of your life are swept and the dust holds no leverage. The door that fear used to enter has new hinges and a different key. You remember the folder that once tried to lock you in silence. You remember the faces that once practiced concern. You remember and bless the memory with closure that wastes no breath. The meeting returns with revised terms that now honor sequence and outcome. You accept the corrected path and decline the vintage excuses. The paper is finally honest enough to carry your signature. You write a note to yourself that names the cost of every step. The note counts courage and rest in the same ledger. The balance is not perfect and the balance is enough. Your work grows again like a tree that survived a pruning done by someone unqualified. New branches reach toward projects that once felt out of reach. The canopy shades a space where your team can plan without flinging. People who watched from the edge begin to step forward. They bring stories with dates and bruises that now want healing instead of hiding. You listen without turning their pain into performance. A policy meeting appears on the calendar with the right intent at last. You enter with examples that belong to more than whispers. The change is past because the room has learned the cost of pretending. You return to your desk and it welcomes you like ground that remembers your feet. The screen holds no ambush. The inbox has fewer masks. The days stretch into a rhythm that respects the muscles you rebuilt. You finish tasks without bargaining with your dignity. You start tasks without apologizing for your standards. Archangel Michael says, protect your peace with the same precision you protect your evidence. Guard your calendar as if it were a boundary around a lighthouse. Treat your rest as non-negotiable fuel for the next crossing. You revisit the chain of events not to reopen wounds but to harvest wisdom. The harvest fills jars labeled with simple words like timing and record and witness. Each jar sits on a shelf you can reach without strain. An invitation arrives from another hallway where your steadiness had been noticed. You consider it with the same clarity you used in the storm. You accept only if the soil matches your roots. A minor storm tries to form in the old style and finds no oxygen near you. It fizzles into a lesson for those who still love smoke. You continue walking with the same measured breath. You write to the person you used to be on the night before the first meeting. You tell them that the floor will hold when the truth stands on it. You tell them that light will outwork performance every time. You speak on a small stage to a circle that values repair over spectacle. Your words move like tools placed in careful hands. The circle grows quieter in a way that means they are ready to build. A new colleague asks for the sentence that changed the room. You say it without volume and the room hears it again. No decision will be recognized that does not stand in transparency and record. You carry that sentence like a pocket compass rather than a weapon. It points you toward rooms worth entering. It points you away from conversations that cost soul without paying purpose. Your calendar now includes time to think rather than only time to react. The thinky helps you see past the next hill. The next hill turns from a threat into a platform. Archangel Michael says, remember the exact taste of the hour you reclaim yourself. Keep that flavor in your mouth when new doors open. Keep it when old doors try to haunt you. You draft a covenant for your future choices. The covenant says yes to truth even when it moves slowly. The covenant says no to flattery even when it moves smoothly. You hold the covenant where your pulse can feel it. It beats along with you during dark mornings and bright afternoons. It steadies the hand that signs and the hand that refuses. A letter appears from someone who once dovetailed your stance. It carries an apology that does not ask for labor to decode. You accept it without turning your life into a classroom. The workweek closes with outcomes that do not need spin. The numbers speak for themselves and the people behind the numbers breathe more easily. The building sounds different when relief replaces pretense. You walk out into a sky that learned your name. The evening wind speaks like a friend who watched you win without shouting. The ground beneath your feet is not the same ground you stood on before. There's a quiet celebration that requires no stage. It looks like clean dishes and folded clothes and a phone that rests face down. It feels like a room that loves you back. You send a final message to your own heart. It reads like a promise you plan to keep. It says you will never again let a script tell you who you are. You sleep with the lights of the city humming like distant approval that you did not need to ask for. The night guards what you earn by choosing daylight. The morning already knows your steps. Archangel Michael says, continue. Continue to be the room where truth sits first. Continue to be the sentence that ends performance and begins repair. You file this chapter under victory earned by evidence and breath. You stack it where you can reach for courage on ordinary Tuesdays. You carry it forward like a key that fits every honest door. The horizon expands because you learned how to walk with a ledger and a lantern. The road answers because it trusts your stride. The future bows to the name you refuse to surrender. You move on without dragging the past like a net. You move on without abandoning the lessons like tools in someone else's shed. You move on with light that knows how to work. Discontinuation ends the way strong bridges end, with weight carried and span unbroken. Your presence remains the weather that meetings cannot outmaneuver. Your voice remains the bell that rooms cannot ignore. Archangel Michael says, keep the room bright and the ledgers close because continuity protects what you just reclaimed. The day breathes differently when truth owns the calendar. Your footsteps write policy that others can stand on without trembling. You meet with the silent workers who watched storms from their desks. They speak now because your stance taught their lungs how to open. Their stories enter the record like lanterns set in a line. You build a framework that prevents quiet harm from wearing friendly clothes. Each rule is simple and measured. Each rule demands a trail that can be followed without permission. The old guard tests your resolve with a soft detour. You decline detours that lead back to shadows. You offer a straight road with mile markers and light. Your documents become a house with windows on every wall. Nothing important happens behind curtains. Everything necessary earns its signature in daylight. You teach the team how to archive proof without turning the day into a courtroom. The archive breathes like a library where memory remains dependable. The shelves carry dates instead of rumors. A new hire arrives with clear eyes and steady hands. You place them where clarity is a daily tool. You show them how truth moves paper faster than politics. You schedule reviews that begin with outcomes before opinions. The room adjusts to facts like a ship finding its true north. Arguments shrink when numbers take their seats. The project pipeline cleans itself under honest water. Waste floats to the top without drama. Real work sinks anchors and holds. Archangel Michael says, treat your influence as stewardship and not spectacle. Quiet power lasts longer than loud performance. Clean systems guard more futures than brave speeches. You refine the sentence that steadied you in crisis. It becomes a header on every agenda. It becomes a law inside your bones. No decision will be recognized that does not stand in transparency and record. The line fits on one page. The page fits in every room. You invite partners who love audits because they love truth. The partnership expands capacity without expanding noise. The projects begin arriving from people who refused fog. A small resistance tries to disguise itself as tradition. You greet tradition with measurement. Only what bears fruit keeps space on the table. You name the old habits that starve good work. They leave without slamming doors. The quiet afterward fins like a hallway after careful sweeping. The budget meets your standards with relief. Money prefers clarity over charm. Numbers rest better when they are not asked to lie. Your calendar gains margin where thinking can breathe. Strategy learns to walk instead of sprint. Creativity stops coughing and starts singing. You design a training that turns survivors into builders. The slides use simple phrases and hard examples. The room leans forward because usefulness is finally in charge. This season asks you to be both anchor and sail. You hold the keel steady. You catch the wind with intention. A letter arrives from a department that once avoided you. It carries respect earned the long way. It asks for your blueprint without asking for your voice. You share the blueprint and keep the voice. The work cop is structure, not soul. The outcome honors difference without losing standards. Archangel Michael says, keep choosing routes that make others safer to stand. Paths that are safe for the most are safe for the best. You attend a review where the new culture is tested by a real deadline. The team meets it without burning their sleep. Excellence arrives without smoke. A difficult decision knocks and finds you ready. You hold a boundary that saves 3 projects from collapse. You hold it without apology and without volume. The ecosystem responds like a forest after rain. Healthy roots start sharing water. Weak roots stop stealing light. A mentor from far away reads your updates and smiles across distance. They recognize the craft of repair in your cadence. They bless the cadence with a single line that says continue. You take one careful week to restore your own edges. Rest becomes part of policy, not a secret reward. Recovering strength becomes an operational standard. A problem from last winter returns to ask for closure. You meet it with tools sharpened by recent weather. The closure lands cleanly and stays closed. You publish a short handbook for hard meetings. It lists steps, phrases, and structures that cannot be twisted. It promises nothing except the dignity of facts. People begin to plan with the expectation of sunlight. They stop hoarding information like coins. They start trading accuracy like seeds. The long corridor of your past now holds portraits of milestones. Each frame marks a time when you refuse to shrink. Each milestone proves that courage can be quiet. Archangel Michael says, humility is not hiding and authority is not noise. Walk in the middle of those truths, walk like someone who knows both belong to you. You update your covenant and add a line about joy. Joy stays non-negotiable even when schedules tighten. Joy turns work from survival into craft. An invitation arrives to lead a rescue for a project drowning in polite confusion. You accept with conditions that preserve breath. The rescue begins on paper before it touches the water. You bring timelines that read like honest clocks. You bring roles that read like promises, not traps. You bring checkpoints that read like lantern posts. The rescue holds steady through 2 storms. Each storm learns your posture and weakens. The project reaches shore with dignity intact. You send a note to every person who carried weight with you. The note names their exact contribution. The words fit in a single paragraph and land like a warm hand. Leadership stops being a stage and becomes a kitchen. Meals of clarity feed the whole house. Dishes get washed by those who ate. A rumor tries to form and dissolves on contact. There is too much light for shape-shifting. There is too much record for reinvention. You turn toward the next horizon without abandoning the current shore. Continuity remains your first promise. Excellence remains your first language. The young ones watch you navigate without panic. Your shoulders lower as they learn your rhythm. Their work improves because fear is not a foreman. You set a final pillar in the place where the first trap was laid. The pillar carries a plaque with the sentence that saved your ground. The plaque faces every new day like a compass. No decision will be recognized that does not stand in transparency and record. The line remains simple and alive. The line continues to earn its key. Archangel Michael says, close this continuation with the same steadiness that opened it. Keep your windows honest and your ledgers clear. Keep your name whole on your own tongue. You walk the perimeter one last time and find no leaks. The house holds because the truth holds, the door remains open to light and closed to fog. You leave the hallway with an unhurried stride. Your shadow looks rested. Your future keeps pace beside you, not behind you. The chapter stores itself on a shelf within reach. Its spine reads repair completed and standards install, its pages smell like daylight that never dims.